Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Amir from BackBrace and I hope you're all doing well, staying healthy and enjoying life wherever you are in the world. I want to take a moment here to express my gratitude for the incredible engagement I've been receiving across various channels and platforms, whether it's on Telegram, WhatsApp, or right here on YouTube. Your questions, feedback, and suggestions mean the world to me. I absolutely love it when you engage, ask questions, comment, and of course when you like and share the content I create for you guys. And if you're new to this channel, you're very welcomed here, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay tuned for future courses and tutorials. And with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into today's tutorial. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to use the power of MongoDB in your Flask application to efficiently manage and control your data. So essentially, I'm going to show you how to integrate MongoDB database to your Flask application. If you want to create, for example, an organizer application, a task manager, a to-do list application, you will need a database for data persistence. You cannot leave your data volatile, so every time you will open the application, all of your to-do items or your tasks, for example, will be gone. So you will need some sort of database. And I didn't want to go with the standard relational database management systems like MySQL, PostgreSQL, or SQLite. I wanted to go with NoSQL database management system. And of course, the most famous NoSQL system is MongoDB. And I would like to mention here that I've covered various aspects of database systems in previous videos. And if you're not familiar with MongoDB or NoSQL databases in general, I highly recommend checking out my MongoDB crash course and the full tutorial on Fullstack, which by the way was the first Fullstack course on YouTube, and it was also featured on the Free Code Camp YouTube channel. So as I said, databases are the backbone of any web application, enabling you to store, manage, and manipulate your data in general. Think about popular platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Your user details, posts, comments, and followers are all neatly organized in a database. This organization allows you to perform essential tasks, such as adding, retrieving, updating, or deleting data as needed. And before getting to the coding part, I'm going to assume that you're familiar with Flask Python framework and MongoDB. And again, if you don't know what is Flask and what is MongoDB, please go ahead and check out the crash courses that I've created for both technologies. I will leave the links to both crash courses for Flask and MongoDB in the description section below. But in a nutshell, Flask is a very minimalistic micro framework for Python programming language. It allows you to create servers from scratch. It doesn't give you out-of-the-box tools and utilities like Django, for example. Django gives you admin dashboard, for instance, SQLite database management system with migration system. It gives you the ability to create a super user. All of these features are absent in Flask. In Flask, you will actually need to build your application from scratch. As far as MongoDB, it's this beautiful, flexible NoSQL database management system that stores data in JSON-like documents. I'm saying JSON-like because it's not actually JSON, it's what we call BSON, which stands for binary JSON. JSON itself stands for JavaScript object notation, so they are objects, and BSON actually have more features and characteristics and capabilities than JSON. And a little bit later, when we're going to get to the coding part, I'm going to import a very important class from the BSON library. Now let's talk a little bit about the prerequisites for this tutorial. Obviously, you will need to know Python. You will need to know what is Flask. Again, if you don't know what is Flask, please go ahead and check out my crash course for that. And also you will need to know what is MongoDB. I'm going to assume that you already have a good knowledge in Flask and MongoDB. So for MongoDB, you will need to install three things. First of all, the community server. That's the MongoDB community server here. You will need to select your package. You will need to select the version. Obviously, you will choose 7.0.2, that's the current version. I'm working on Microsoft Windows, so I'm going to choose Windows x64. And I always choose MSI and not zip in order to, install it directly on your computer. So that's the first thing. This is very important to install. And while you're installing your MongoDB community server, please make sure to install MongoDB as a service, run service as network service user. Do not check that second one, run service as a local or domain user, right? So again, make sure to install MongoDB as a service, run service as a network user. right? So that's the first thing. This is the server, but we will need now the GUI tool. So you will need to install also your MongoDB Compass. That's your graphical user interface tool here. Also, you will download the stable release on Windows 64 if obviously you're working on Microsoft Windows, and package executable.exe. Right? So that's your Mongo Compass, and I'm going to show you now how everything looks like. And the last thing you will need to install is your MongoDB shell. So as you can see here, it says that this is the quickest way to connect to MongoDB. We're going actually to connect to the server using both ways, the shell and the Compass. But yeah, we can do it only with the shell or only with the Compass, but I want to show you both in the same time. All right, so that's it, guys. Please make sure again to install your community server. When you install your server, make sure to install MongoDB as a service, and you will need to install the shell and the Compass. And as far as the installation is very straightforward. You will click next, 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 and yeah, you will be all set up. Now let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So if you will open your command prompt, not PowerShell, because I'm here in my PowerShell, but I also have my command prompt open. And if you will type mongo sh, which stands for Mongo Shell, of course, now you're connected to your MongoDB. The connection is on localhost, which is 127.0.0.1 on port 27017. That's the default port for MongoDB. And I'm going also to show you the Compass. So this is our MongoDB Compass and how it looks like. You can see here MongoDB localhost 27017, and if you will click on connect, you're now connected to your databases. Actually, a database have what we call a collection. The collection is very analogous to your table in your relational database system, such as MySQL, for example. You will have tables with records and fields. You have relations between two tables. You have foreign key, you have primary key, constraints, all of that good stuff of the traditional relational database management systems, or SQL, structured query language, right? Here we are in a different realm. We are in the NoSQL, or not only SQL system, where we have a collection of documents. And again, a collection is analogous to the table, and a document is analogous to a record in SQL system, right? Again, I'm going to assume that you understand already what is MongoDB and NoSQL systems. If you don't, I'm going to leave some links in the description below that can help you along the way. But yeah, for now we are ready. So I have my Compass open, I have my shell open, and I have my PowerShell open. So yeah, with that being said, let's go ahead, roll up our sleeves and start creating our project. Alright guys, so I'm inside my PowerShell here. First thing that I want to do is I want to go to a folder where I want to create my project. You want also to create a folder for your projects, right? Your tutorials or the future projects that you want to create. That's a good practice. And now as you can see, I'm in a folder called Beck, and I want to create this application. I will call it to do Flask Mongo. Let's cd to that, Flask Mongo. And of course, what we'll need to do, and I know you have guessed it, we will need to activate our virtual environment. You can use pipenv, you can use venv. Both ways work perfectly. The most important is that we will have our virtual environment activated, so we can actually install the dependencies and libraries that we want only in that project and not on our global file system. So once that's done, I want to install Flask. So that's the Flask library, and from the Flask library I'm going to import later some functions, some classes, all of the utilities that the Flask library has to offer. I also want to install a very important library called pymongo. And pymongo is a library or an engine that's going to be your key for unlocking the full potential of MongoDB within your Python code. So with Flask, Django, Fast API, or whatever, you can connect to your MongoDB database. You can actually create collections, you can insert data, you can retrieve data, or even you can delete data. So I hope, guys, you're not confused. I'm not sure who's watching this tutorial, but to simplify it, a collection is a table and a document is a record. So now we're done with installing Flask and pymongo in our project. Let's now go ahead and connect to the MongoDB server and create a collection. And for that, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code, but you're free to use whatever code editor you prefer. So let me create a file. I'm going to call it app.py. Right. So the first thing that I want to import is the Flask class. So I'm going to import from the Flask library. I want to import the Flask class. So you can see here it says that the Flask object implements a WSGI application and acts as the central object. Again, guys, I'm not going to explain what is WSGI, what is ASGI. I have a video explaining what's the difference between both the web server gateway interface and the asynchronous server gateway interface. I'm going to leave the link to that video in the description below. But yeah, we have actually imported the Flask class, which we're going to instantiate later and create an application object. The second thing that I want to import is the Mongo client. So from pymongo, I want to import Mongo client. And this is a client-side representation of a MongoDB cluster. And we're going actually to use the Mongo client class in order to create a client object. That client object is going to help us to create a Flask database. So that's the Mongo client. And now let me go ahead and instantiate the Flask class by creating an app object. And I'm going to say here Flask, and here is name __. So this is my Flask application, and I'm going to declare a variable. I'm going to call it client, and here is our Mongo client that's going to take two different parameters. The first parameter is the host. The second parameter is the port. And the host, of course, is going to be our local host, and the port is going to be the default port for MongoDB, which is 27017. Right? So this is our client. Next, I want to create a database. To do that, I'm going to utilize my client object, and I'm going to create a database, and I'm going to call it Flask _ database. All right. And inside this database, I want to create a collection of documents, or in other words, a table, if you will. So to do that, I'm going to declare a variable. I'm going to call it to-dos. And then I'm going to take our database and I'm going to create a collection. Also, I'm going to call it to-dos. So this is going to be our to-dos collection. Inside this collection or inside this table, we're going to create different documents or different records. And I'm going to show you what are the records that we want to create based on each field or each attribute. So let me just put a couple of comments here. So this is a MongoDB database, and this is a to-dos collection. All right, and then after I'll say if name is equal to main, I want the application to run on the debug mode. So this is to set the debug mode to true, and that's for development, obviously. So every time you make any modifications in your code, you don't have to kill the server and run it again to see the effect on the front end. All right, so let me go ahead now and activate the virtual environment just to make sure. Okay, it's already activated. And let me now run our application, Python app.py. All right, now this is a development server. Do not use it in production deployment. And of course, nothing is shown because we haven't created any routes yet. All right, but we are going to keep the server running. So we have created a database, we have created a collection, but be careful, in MongoDB, databases and collections are created lazily. This simply means that if we're going to run our app.py file, none of the code that's related to the database is going to be executed until the first document is created. So as we're going to create a task manager or organizer or to-do list, call it whatever you want. And the moment we're going to create our first to-do item or task item, that's going to actually be clear in the database. It's going to be shown. So now if I'm going to show you, let me just come here in Mongo shell. Let's actually do show DBS. We're going to have the admin, the config, and the local. These are the default databases in MongoDB. Our Flask database is not shown yet. Later it's going to be shown when we're going to add our first item. So now let's go ahead and create our web page for adding and displaying the to-dos with the to-do item, add an item, delete an item, and so on. So from Flask, I will need also other classes. So I will need render template, I will need URL for, I will need requests, and I will need redirect. So render template is a function that's going to be used to render HTML template. The URL underscore for, this is a function that is going to be used to generate URLs. The request object is going to access your to-do items, your documents, basically in your collection. The redirect function, this is going to be used to redirect us to the index page after adding a to-do item. Let's go ahead now and create our first route. So let's go ahead and add app decorator at app.route. And you know the HTTP request method, the default HTTP request method actually is get. So on an empty route, that's the index or the home page, if you will leave it like that, the server is going to accept it as a get route, right? Because that's the default route. Unless you are going to explicitly state that the methods that I want for this route are going to be get, and you can also add post here. So this route obviously is going to show data, but also is going to allow you to submit data or submit your to-do items. And after, I will need a handler. And a handler simply is the function that is going to do something. It's going to take an action. In this case, we are going to take an action to render the template, to render our home page to the web browser. So we'll say return render template. And again, this is the function that we have imported from the Flask library. We're going to utilize it in order to render our index.html. We haven't actually created that yet. So let me just save and let's come here and let's create a folder. I'm going to call it templates. I also want to create a folder for my styling, my CSS files, or file rather. I'm going to create here styles.css, and inside templates I'm going to do index.html. So inside index I want well, actually there is no syntax highlighting here, so what I would do is in the root folder here, I'm going, no, not here, let's do like that. Yep, I'm going to create index.html. You see now the extension and the icon is different, right? Inside templates, because Flask understands that whatever HTML file inside the folder called templates, it just turned to this Django icon. Because, you know, Django template language and Jinja are very similar to each other. Actually, all of those Python web framework template engines or template languages are very similar. Whether it's the Django template language, the Jinja, Jinja 2, Chameleon, Mako, it's actually HTML, but with a special syntax with double curly braces and, you know, all of that crazy stuff. I'm sure you're familiar with that. So enough me yapping, let's go ahead and do our doc type. Let me just minimize this a little bit. And I'm going to call my application MongoDB Flask app. I also want to link my styles.css. So as you can see here, this is the correct structure. The static folder inside the styles.css, we want to connect with, you know, in HTML you would do link, right? So we're going to do the same link with rel styles sheet, but for the horizontal reference, we're not going to do styles.css. We can do that, but instead, what I want to do, open double curly braces, and then you will say URL underscore for, then you will open parentheses, Then we'll say static. That's the folder from which we want to pull out our file. And then the file name attribute, and that's going to be equal to css/styles.css. Right, that's the correct form to link your styles to your HTML. So inside body, that's enough for the head. Inside body, I want to have h1 tag. I'm going to say MongoDB Flask app as well, the same as the title. And now I want to have a div with a class of content. Inside the div, I want to have a form, but without action. Instead, I want the method to be post. And inside the form, by the way, let's open live server just to take a look to the front end. So like that, and I will need a paragraph. Just minimize this a little bit. So in the paragraph, I want a label, and the label here for content. And inside the label, we'll say to do content. And let's actually do that in bold. Right? So that's the label, and also I want an input. So that's going to be in a different paragraph. So inside that paragraph, I want an input with a type of text, but I want to add name of content, and also we'll give it a placeholder. We're going to say to do content or add to do. Right, so that's for the input. I also want to have another label for the degree. So we'll have the content and the degree of importance, your priority. Is this to do item an important item or unimportant item? So these are the two fields or two attributes that we're going to create. Yeah, so let's go ahead now and have another paragraph. And inside that paragraph, I want label. Let's do it also B. I forgot to do that, so let's put it like this. Oops. Right. So label 4, we'll call this degree. And we'll call this degree like that. Right, perfect. And also I want another paragraph with input. And here, instead of text, I want to be a radio button. I also wanted, so let's do like this. Right. So let's give it an ID. I'm gonna call it degree 0. Name is degree. This is a required field. Right. Just minimize the space here. Oh, also I want the value to be important. Right, so this is the degree for the important, and I'm going to just after the input I want label, and here I'm going to say important. So that's the degree 0, and here I'm going to also set it for degree 0, and the exact same thing will go for the unimportant. So all of the important here. So first of all, let's just make like that, like that. This is degree 1. This is unimportant. And this is unimportant. And after that paragraph, I want a button, and it will have type of submit. And we'll call here submit. And I'm gonna call it submit. Right? So this is the submit button. This is our very basic, this is the skeleton of our application. I'm going to add some styling now. So it's not going to be shown actually, as I'm doing with the Open Live Server. Okay, let me do like that for a moment, and let's do link, and we'll do static styles.css. This is just for the front end. We're going to ignore all of that later, right? I'm going to change all of that because we're going to run the server, actually, the Flask server, as all of this is running only on the front end, the HTML rendering through the OpenLive server. So yeah, let's do body and h1. Let's give it margin of 0 and padding of 0. And also let's go for the body to have font family. Let's do the Arial Helvetica. Okay. All right. Let's go for the h1. Let's go for the h1 and say text align. Let's align the text to the center. Let's also go for color to be 333. Also for the background color, I'm going to give it the F0, F0, F0. And the padding, we're going to give it 20 pixels. So padding 20 pixels. All right, perfect. As far as the content, I want the max width to be 600 pixels. Also, I want the margin to be 0 auto, and the padding also I wanted 20 pixels. As far as the form, let me just take a look. Right, okay, I don't like when curly braces like that. Yep. Okay. As far as the background color, I want it to be F9, F9, F9. Right, this off-white color, it's ivory almost. The padding, we'll give it also 20 pixels. 20 pixels. And border radius, I'm gonna give it 5 pixels only. Some roundness to the edges. And also box shadow, let's say 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, and we'll need RGB alpha for 0, 0, 0, then 0.1. All right, great. So looks nice. Now I want the paragraph inside the form to have a margin 10 pixels up and down, or top and bottom, and 0 for right and left. As far as the label, I want just to make it bold. Font weight, I want to be bold. These are the labels. For the input, and I'm going to explicitly state that I want the type of text because there is other input which is type of radio, the important and the unimportant. So I'm gonna say type is set to text here in this case. So for this input, I want the width to be 100%, 100%, not pixels, right? And also I want padding to be 10 pixels. I want also the border to be 1 pixel, solid, CCC. Also the border radius, I'm gonna give it 5 pixels. Right, so this is for this input field. For the radio buttons, we're going to say inputs. I want just the margin right to be 5 pixels. Nothing more, nothing less. For the button, I want the background color to be, let's make it green actually, right? And let's do the color to be this color. Let's make it white. Actually, let's make it white. Yep, that's better. And the button looks absolutely disgusting, so let's give it some padding, 10 pixels, top and bottom, 20 pixels, right and left. Let's also remove the border. Right, that's better. Let's give it some roundness, border radius. Let's also give it 5 pixels. Okay, that's much better. And also we'll turn the cursor to be pointer, cursor, pointer, right. Okay, and let's also give it some hovering. So button on hover. Let's give it a different background color. So background color, not the green yellow. Let's do green. I think I can modify that here if I will do like this. Just a different type of green. Yeah, just for, you know, effect, nothing more. Yeah, okay, I think that's it for now. Later we're going to change for the to-dos, or let's do it now because I want it to be clear. Right, okay, let's go ahead and do the to-dos as well. So let me do .todo. Let's give it background color. Let's give it this F9, F9, F9. Also, let's give it some padding, 20 pixels. Let's also give it some margin, 10 pixels and 0, right and left. Border radius, also some box shadow, 0, 2 pixels, 4 pixels, and again RGBA 0000.1. And for the paragraph for the to-dos, I'm just going to set the margin to 0. Alright, so that's basically it for styling. Now let me do the following. So I'm going to disable this and I'm going to enable that. I'm going to take everything in that index.html here in that root, and I'm going to paste it in here inside index.html in the templates. Right, so this is saved. So this is the styling, that's fine. And now let's go ahead and run our server. Something not right here, so let's just shut the server for now. Let me do like this one more time. So the server is rendering everything perfect, but styling is not being reflected, and that's weird. So URL for static file name. Yeah, inside static, I needed to create another folder called CSS. I apologize for that, guys. So inside your static folder, you're going to create another folder called CSS, and you're going to move that inside it. Once you do that, you hit save, you refresh, and everything is being rendered perfectly. So don't forget that for your styling, you will need static CSS and then styles.css. Also here you can create JavaScript folder. You can also create images folder, right? So these are the known to Flask folders by name. So if you will try to change that, if you will try to do like this, for example, you'll see even that the folder icon has been changed, right? And that's a good indication that, yeah, everything is okay. Right, so with that out of the way, let's just shut all of that. Let me just do like this. Let me make sure that we have our Mongo shell opened and that our Mongo GUI, our MongoDB Compass GUI is also opened. Now, if we're going to add any to do here, nothing actually will happen. So run for an hour, for instance, import and submit, nothing actually happens. what we'll need to do is to edit the route here in the backend. So I'm going actually to push this a little bit below. Let's just make like that. And inside my index function, inside my handler, I want to check out if the HTTP request which is sent is equal to post request. So what I want to do here is I want to check if the HTTP request method that is sent is equal to post method. In this case, I will declare two variables, the content, which is equal to request.form content, and similarly for the degree. So we'll do here degree. So those two variables, I will insert them inside the document. So I'm going to take my collection and I'm going to use a method called insert1. So you can see here in pymongo you have different methods. This here to insert one document, this here to insert different documents, and this also to insert one document. So I'm going to say insert1, and actually we want to open that. It's going to be a row BSON document. And inside that BSON document, we're going to specify the content and the degree to whatever the content and the degree the user is going to enter. So this is the content parameter, and this is to whatever content the user has entered. And also for the degree, so that's the degree parameter, is set to whatever degree that you have chosen here. And finally, we are going to redirect the application to go to the main homepage, URL for our index file. Right, that's our homepage. To display all the saved to-dos, we're going to use a method called find. So I'm going to save all of the to-do items in a variable called all_to-dos, and that's going to be equal to our to-dos collection dot find. And here we have used the find method outside of our code in order to handle the post requests that will return essentially all the to-do documents available in our to-do collection, or to-dos collection rather. And then here, let me just reduce the gap between those two lines. So here inside our render template method next to the index.html, I'm going to set the to-dos to all_to-dos. And this simply means that we have saved previously all the to-dos that we have got from our database in this variable all to-dos, right? So we have actually passed all of the to-do items inside our render template next to our index.html in order to be also rendered in our front end. And that's it basically. And if we're going to come here and refresh the page, we will have this message that says confirm for resubmission. And now we are ready to add a to-do item. So let me go ahead and add study Spanish with my brother. If you will not choose the degree of importance and you will hit submit directly, you will have the form here that says that please select one of these options. So let's say important, for example, and let's hit submit. So of course, in the front end, we don't have any of the Jinja code that will display the to-do items. But let me go to my Mongo Compass first. What you want to do is to hit the refresh button. And now we will have our Flask database appearing here. And if we will open our Flask database in the to-dos, we will find our study Spanish with my brother. So we have here our ID number, which is object ID with this serial number that MongoDB generates automatically for each item. We have the content, which is one of the fields. The second field is the degree. So the content is our to-do and the degree is the importance, exactly like we have set it in our front end. So now we are sure that our database is connected to our Flask application. Now let me go ahead and show you also in our Mongo shell. So in your Mongo shell, if you will do show dbs again, now we have our Flask database, right? So this is our Flask database appearing in our Mongo shell. And to select our Flask database, we'll say use Flask_database or whatever your database is called. Once we are switched to our Flask underscore database, we can say now db.todos.find. And there we go. We have used the find function to get all the to-dos inside the database. And if you will try to add another to-do here, so let's say for instance, make a cup of tea, and we'll say that's not important, submit. Now, if we will display everything, we will have our two different to-do items, the study Spanish and the make a cup of tea. The same exact thing will happen if you will, if we will close our documents, we will refresh, we'll display the to-dos, and we'll have here our two documents. The first document, which is the study Spanish with the degree of important, and the second document, which is the make a cup of tea with the degree of unimportant, inside our to-dos collection, inside our Flask underscore database. Okay, so I hope that everything is crystal clear for you guys. So to display all the to-do items inside my Flask application, I will need to tweak a little bit in our index.html. Not this one, obviously, I will need to delete it. Then we'll go to index.html, which is in our templates. And I'm going to go just here below the line, because I'm going to display all the to-dos here. So what I want to do is I want to loop over the to-dos, curly braces, ampersand, for each to-do item in my to-dos collection. I want to have a div, and that div will have a class to do. So let's just not forget to close the div. There we go. So inside here, I'm gonna have a paragraph. Also, let's just forget to close the paragraph. Inside the paragraph, I will say double curly braces. So what I will say is I want to display each to-do document with the sub content or the attribute of content, and also the to-do, just make like that, with the attribute of degree. Let's just make the degree italic. Okay, and don't forget to shut the for code block. So we'll shut that with end for. So in Jinja, the Django template language, Jinja 2, Chameleon, Mako, all of these template engines, if you will start a for loop, that's a for loop code block, you will need to shut it with end for. Okay, let's just refresh here and boom. We have our study Spanish with my brother, important, and make a cup of tea, unimportant. Let's actually, let's go ahead and open the static, the styles. Let me add here for also each to do italic to have a different color. And let's have it this 888. It's grayish color. Let's refresh. Perfect. Let's now go ahead and do the final step to delete the to-do. So let's just add another route at app route and on empty route. And of course you can say here methods equal to post, because deleting is going to send an HTTPS post HTTP request, right? But there is actually a shortcut for that was introduced with Flask version 2.0.0 in May 2021, I remember. So let me just show you. That's Flask version 2.0.0. You can see here it says that, where is it? Yeah, add route decorators for common HTTP methods, for example, at app.post/login is a shortcut for at app.route_login methods equal to post. Right, so instead of doing all that to delete, we can simply say at app.post, and then here you will enter your route. So in our case, we want a specific ID because we want to target a specific object ID number. So that's the ID number generated by MongoDB, and we want to go on a route called delete. And with that, I want to create a handler. I'm gonna call it delete, and that's also going to take the targeted ID as an input, as a parameter. So let me just show you here in the MongoDB compass. You see here the underscore ID, the first line, the underscore ID is set to object ID, and then inside parentheses and single quotes, you have this crazy ID, which is a mix of numbers and characters, right? That's actually an object ID. So what we will need to do is to convert the string of the ID to an object ID that MongoDB can understand. So how we can do that? We can do that actually by importing from Bson, and Bson stands for binary JSON, encoding and decoding. It says here that the mapping from Python types to Bson types is as follows: Python type Bson type supported direction, and you find here a bunch of stuff. Feel free to read that, but this is simply the Bson module, and from the Bson module we want to access the object ID, and we want to import the object. The O and the I are capitalized, be careful, the object ID class. And with that object ID class, I'm going to return to my delete function here, and I'm going to say to-dos dot, not many, but one, because we want to target only one ID for one document. So delete one document, and the document here is going to be set to whatever the ID is, or whatever the object ID is actually. I will have underscore ID exactly like this one. Underscore ID is set to whatever the object ID class is, taking in the ID number that you have chosen to delete. And then finally, we're going to redirect back to our index.html. So URL, the index.html page. All right, and that's basically it. So let's get back to our application. So let's say read a book. That's an important task. Submit, and that's added here. Okay. I forgot to add a delete button. So let's go ahead and add a delete button in index.html. So let me just shut that, and let's shut that. So let me add a comment here. I will say fetching a to-do document. And here below, I want to delete a to-do document from the collection. So I want to create a form. The form here is going to have method of post, and also action is going to be equal to open, close double curly braces like that. And inside here, I'm going to say URL underscore for, and that's going to be for deleting the ID, which is equal to the to-do document sub object ID, the ID itself, right? The converted ID, I mean. So that's as far as the form. And also I want to have an input. So here input with the type submit, and we will have value, which is equal to delete to do. And also I want on click event. So on click, so whenever you will delete here, I want just confirmation message. Are you sure that you want to delete this item or not? You can totally ignore that if you want. But what I want to do here is to return confirm message. And here I will say, are you sure it's really difficult to talk and type in the same time, right? So yeah, that's it basically, guys. All right, so let's refresh, and we have an error. Ginger 2 unknown comment. All right, the tag comment. Okay, it's not accepting the comment, but That's weird. Oh, I think it's taking the Django, not the. I'm sure that for Jinja there is a different syntax for commenting. You know what? We can do it the same as in HTML. So save, refresh, and there we go. Why is this crazy? Oh, I didn't actually shut the tag, so let's do like this, right? But still this, oh, I didn't actually shut the form, so let me just do like this, and that's much better. And I want actually to wrap the important and unimportant in two parentheses, so we'll do that here. So for the degree, I'm gonna put it just between parentheses. Okay, and that's better. Right, so let's now go ahead and try to delete. So if I will delete to do, I will have a message here saying that, are you sure you want to delete this entry? If I'll press OK, it has been deleted. Perfect. Now let's check here. Let's shut the documents first. Let's open again, and we have the same. Make a cup of tea and read a book. Similarly, we will have here. That's actually because I have deleted the last one. Okay, so let's add, for instance, run for an hour. That's important. Submit. So run for an hour, important. Let's do again, just display the to-do items, our documents. We have run for an hour, read a book, make a cup of tea. And if we'll check here again, we'll do, I need to close it first, open again, and boom. We have our documents created and stored in our to-dos collection, in our Flask database. So let me delete make a cup of tea, delete yes, okay. Let's see here again in our Mongo shell, and the tea is gone, right? And if I will refresh here, we'll go again to Flask database, to our to-dos collection. Also, our T to-do item is deleted. If I will delete the read a book from our front end, that's deleted. Refresh, that's persistent. Close that, run again. We have only a run for an hour, which is exactly on our front end and also is on our Mongo shell. Alright guys, so that wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching the whole thing. I hope this video was useful to you. If you found it useful, please like the video, comment below and share it with your friends. Also, you will find the GitHub repo link in the description below. Feel free to use it. And if you have any questions, suggestions, feedback, please don't forget to leave them in the comments below, or you can reach out to me directly via email on backbrace@outlook.com. Thank you so much once again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay safe and be well. See you later, guys.